This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
So you find us still in the second hour of the Power Zone on Power 98.7. A big thank you to everybody that has been with us from midnight to where you find us now, especially those that rallied behind the open line and that feature with Tlhogi. Really appreciated. So we're moving, right? We're moving to another conversation. And this morning we've roped in Goitsemang Matlhabe, who's a journalist, but also an advocate for human or for children's rights. I'm always used to human rights. So Goitsemang is an advocate for children's rights, and this morning we're going to be talking about the National School Nutrition Program, particularly this Food for Our Kids program, and just look at the work that they've been doing here to try close the gaps. Earlier on, remember, I told you that there's a lot that is happening here, bleak really, when you look at some of these issues that are playing themselves out here. We saw there in KZN the recent strikes, seeing the disruptions of food deliveries to some schools here. Also an exposé in the Sunday Times on the compromised quality of meals here served to learners. That's a cause of a concern. But there's also a court order, a court case that is playing out here. We hear that there are about 22% of service providers that are still yet to be paid for their services. This would be those that are part of the National School Nutrition Program. So we see some of the interventions aimed at closing these gaps. And this morning, we're going to be talking about these challenges and how we're fostering and playing for the solution here. So we're on 0861 987 000. Thereby X, we go by at Power FM 987 at Katlego Legodi _ Goitsemang, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Katlego, and good morning to the listeners at home. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for giving us your time. Really a cause for concern because at the center of all of these challenges would be vulnerable young ones that would look to this program to really get somewhat of a relief, somewhat of a sense of meaning, some sort of strength in terms of the academics here and approaching the school day without any hustle. But we don't see this program really coming through the way that it should. Maybe let's start by getting a sense of the importance of this National School Nutrition Program. What is it all about, and how do we see these gaps starting to show themselves out?
Right. Thank you so much, Katlego. Now, the National School Nutrition Program is a national program, obviously by the Department of Education. However, in terms of sort of making sure that food is delivered, that the tenders and everything is the jurisdiction, obviously, of the provinces. Now, as you so rightly mentioned, there are problems upon problems that keep occurring from the respective provinces. I mean, you mentioned KZN already, where there've been protests with suppliers not being paid. We also had a similar issue where food was not delivered to our children in the Gauteng department because there were suppliers who were challenging the appointment of providers. Now, the NSNP caters for children in your quintiles 1 to 3 schools. So that's the poorest of the poorest communities. And oftentimes you find that one meal that they get at school, it's what those children rely on. Now, to paint a bigger picture of what's going on here, I mean, we have numerous reports that point to issues of stunting and malnutrition. And given that this program caters for as many as 10 million children, ensuring that it runs smoothly should be one of our key priorities, particularly if we're going to be keeping up with the Children's Act.
I mean, it does sound like this was really got sent when one looks at it in terms of closing some of the gaps, especially in those poverty-stricken areas. We know very well that there are still those vast inequalities that exist here. Do we see this as the prerogative of the department to ensure that there's monitoring and evaluation, and there's a need really to safeguard all of these efforts without any hindrance, because we know very well that there's a huge gap that they're closing here, especially when you're talking about the poorest of the poorest here, about 10 million of those children that will be dependent on this. Then really when you look at how it was started, one would say that then the department would really need to be jealous about how it's rolled out because it does then put them and paint them in good light.
You're absolutely correct. And that's one of the reasons why, as an organization, we've been advocating for the centralization of the program. Because obviously the program is decentralized to the provinces, and year after year, we see issues of suppliers not being paid, food not being delivered, the quality of the food being provided to the kids being called into question. And as an organization, we're saying, look, this, considering how many kids are affected and the budget of the public purse that is used for this program, it needs to be centralized and put in the highest office of government so that they can monitor and track and address some of these issues. One of the reasons this idea to centralize came from the department itself, taking heed some of the issues that they've been noticing from the provinces. And while we respect the minister's prerogative to say, look, we are concerned about this program, we're saying, look, we've tried this decentralized route and it's not yielding the success that we're saying. We can't simply say, look, we'll get it right eventually, because of the adverse effects it's going to have on children's development and their cognitive growth at the end of the day. And that's what I'm saying. If she centralizes it, she'll have oversight. She will be able to deal with some of the issues of irregularities, of corruption, unless the minister is not confident enough in her own department to handle this.
Yeah, and one would say that as well, it's really an opportunity here because she's new in this administration. For the longest of time, we've had Minister Angie Motshekga who had her own way of doing things, and one would say that what worked, what didn't work, did not work. So this then becomes an opportunity for Minister Kwahube then to also just intervene in terms of, closing some of these gaps. When you look at it, would you say, Goitsemang, here that some of these issues would be opportunistic elements that found their way into these programs? Just earlier on, we're talking about this latest Gauteng State of Ethics report, which revealed widespread unethical conduct. There are over 150 officials that are doing business with the provincial government here. And this independent report that has been given to the Premier, Panyaza Lesufi, really flagging the Education Department as one of the main offenders here where some of these gaps are concerned. This Education Department is at the center of what we're talking about here. Do you find that maybe this could be man-made? Some of these issues could be opportunistic elements, issues of corruption that may have found themselves into this school nutrition program. And now, because it's really decentralized, we don't have ways of managing it or even tracking as to who the culprits become here.
You're absolutely correct, Kagiso. At the moment, these issues that we're noticing are not new. And it's like I said previously, it's issues that have been highlighted year after year with the program. And if we consider that there's a budget of absolutely 9.7 billion rand allocated just for the 2024-2025 financial year, I think it only makes sense for the minister to have this program and these funds, be able to track where everything goes, be able to provide our kids with the healthy, nutritious food that we need, and realize that what we've been doing is not working. And the corruption that she is so concerned about, what better way to deal with it when she is right with this program, is right in her office to see all of these issues?
Yeah, no, it's really just a cause for concern. It's really a cause for concern. And just a reminder to our listeners at home that we're discussing a very important one this morning on 0861 987 000. That is where we'd like for you to really engage with us here and just give us a sense of how you're receiving us and what do you make of this school nutrition program. Is it working, for you where you are in your school? Do you see it coming through? We know very well that we've had Goitsemang give us a sense of the numbers as well. There are over 10 million children that are really finding themselves dependent on this. And Goitsemang, just coming back to you, do you reckon that some of these issues that you've flagged are receiving somewhat of a positive response from the minister's office? I mentioned here that she's still new in the job in a way after having taken over from Angie Motshekga, who was the minister for the longest of time. One would say she's still trying to familiarize herself or chart her own path or come through with her own programs. I know she's been looking at the issue of the pit latrines to say she would want to do away with those, even setting targets here. There are a lot of issues that have been also flagged around the norms and the standards where this department is concerned to say, how do we see these norms and standards playing themselves out, and would we need to revisit them? A lot of work that is being done by pressure groups to at least, reimagine a different, 10 years, different 15 years, 30 years later, 31 years later, where the transformation of this sector is concerned. Are you receiving joy from her office?
Well, Katlego, to be honest with you, we have interacted with the minister since there was an issue with the tender, because our biggest thing as Feed Our Kids is basically to say, look, Minister, you've tried it. It doesn't work. And the department has been receptive to basically call some of us in as stakeholders just to discuss where we see things and how come we are basically championing for the centralization of the system as compared to hers. And that's why we haven't really spoken out against the minister, but simply to say to her, while you are still making up your mind, kids are going hungry. Kids are being affected. And this matter deserves the utmost urgency.
And let's talk about and zoom into the work that you guys do there at Feed Our Kids. I mean, really, one would say there's a need then for a lot of these organizations that would look out for the vulnerability of the young ones. When you think about all of these issues that have been playing themselves out at schools, you would reckon that the young ones do need somewhat of a voice here to come through and represent them. I mean, we were just looking at this issue around justice for Kwekwe just the other day, and a lot of people saying that we need to zoom into what is happening at our schools here and not treat it as an afterthought. Because there lies the most vulnerable, which should be the young ones here. So let's talk about the work that you guys do there. And really, do we see these issues landing on your table? Do we see some people coming through and approaching you to say that please do try by all means to blow the whistle here, especially where the young ones are concerned? As Feed Our Kids.
Right. As Feed Our Kids, we're not just an advocacy. So we're advocating to push, obviously, the important stakeholders to do what's right in terms of the Children's Act, to protect the kids' rights and ensure their best interests are provided for. But for us, our key focus, taking on a number of reports that show that South Africa is one of 20 countries that account for 65% of all children living in severe child food poverty. What we are trying to do is to basically implement programs into our schools, or reintroduce old programs that we feel could make a significant contribution to society. One of that is the Roots of Hope campaign that we are kickstarting off with our stakeholders, which is to bring back your school gardens into our schools once again. Because for us, that not only speaks to providing kids with healthy and nutritious food, but it also has a skills development. So in that way, we introduce agriculture and farming to our kids, which is something that is quite crucial.
Yeah, that is something that is really, really, it's really commendable because we need to ensure that we work with the schools. We need to ensure that there's a need here to come through where these young ones are concerned here. Do you see community members welcoming? Do you see community members open to some of these efforts that you're introducing? And do you see some of these issues really coming through, for some of these families, because we do speak of the most vulnerable here when we're talking about the kids. Maybe let's talk about the response from those that you've been working with, the communities as well. And what is it that parents can do? Because sometimes we see parents just, the moment the young one steps out of the house, then it becomes a problem of the school or the challenge of the school. And we see schools really playing a pivotal role here, because this is where most of of these young ones spend their time. So when you're talking about the families as well, when you're talking about the mothers, fathers, even the schools themselves, do we see them open to such initiatives, open to the work that you guys would come through with as Feed Our Kids?
I think the most important thing we need to consider is that we need a lot more education in terms of the benefits of agriculture and the benefits of farming for our kids. And that's something that we've seen that we still need to sort of bring and highlight to communities to say, look, we're not just bringing seeds and that's it. These very seeds are going to be the vegetables that are going to be the meals that your kids eat. And in cases, obviously, where funds are not going to be there, this is what you can use. So for us, our biggest challenge at the moment is pushing the education element to show communities, particularly those in the poorest, to say, you can survive, but here, and you can start it. And it's not just giving you a handout, but this is giving you a way to sustain yourself. And I think that's our core focus at the moment, to provide that education to people to say, let's not just wait for the handouts. Let's show you once again that the basics can help you live.
Yeah, I know that is really spot on here. And what happens then, Goitsemang, to these young ones when we don't see the food delivered here? I'm just looking at this report and I'm seeing that there have been engagements with the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Education. They're talking about really the payment glitches and the issues that they experienced here. The department saying 78% of the payments here, really looking at handling these payments coming through around the National School Nutrition Program. But also when you look at it, it does look like service providers are not having it easy with some of the departments here. When you look at these issues that are playing themselves out, where does this then leave the young one? Do we see this food not reaching the schools? What then happens? What becomes the implication of these issues that are playing themselves out? This tussle around, payments and the likes. Because really, when you look at it, one would say that there are issues of the lack of transparency here, where communication is concerned here, and the uninterrupted provision of these meals to learners. Can it be somewhat of an indictment? Can people be penalized when food don't reach where they're supposed to go? What happens? This then, I guess, leaves the young ones in limbo, as we see the department fighting with service providers for outstanding monies.
You're absolutely right. What we see in KZN is what we're seeing in Gauteng, where you have the department saying, look, we are having an issue with the suppliers and this has affected the delivery of food supplies to the schools. Now, can you imagine if you are a young child that is reliant on that one meal, and while everybody is squabbling, you don't get that one meal? That ultimately affects the child's performance overall in school. And that is why for us, centralization is such an urgent matter, because of while there's squabbles, while there's delays and everything, the hardest hit are our children. And that means we are basically failing them as a country just to provide, to look after their best interests right from the get-go. And that is why we are saying this is a unique opportunity for the minister. Yes, you're absolutely right. She is new, but that is why she can then take this program and saying, right, considering this is my term, this has not been working, I want to bring this closer because it involves children, and I want to see and ensure that everything runs according to order.
Yeah, no, there's really a need for urgent intervention here, because really at the heart of what we see playing themselves out here becomes the kids. What is it that the SGBs can do? What is it that do we see them featuring in this? Because like you said, there's a need now to, push this less dependency. Do we see schools becoming innovative as well in terms of ensuring that the kids are fed?
Now, the schools, obviously, the SGBs are trying their bit. We even saw reports recently of SGB members themselves questioning the type of food that is being provided to the schools. So for them, they really are handicapped in terms of, okay, this is what we are getting, and we're going to try to do what's best with what we have. But for us as an organization, we're saying, look, we can't simply leave it to the SGPs. Yes, they are responsible, and hence, rightly so, they picked up and raised a huge concern to say, we see that food is being provided, but we don't know these foodstuffs. We haven't even seen them in your traditional retailers. What is going on? And we welcome and we actually commend them for that oversight. And we're saying, we hope that the department and the minister can see that this problem keeps on going. And if it gets to a point where we need to question the quality of food, then that's something we really should be worried about.
Yeah. And again, really, when you look at it, there is a concern around that quality of food. I mean, these are kids. Even as parents, we're told that you need to include this, exclude that in their lunch box and the likes, meaning that there should be greater consideration as to the types of food and their, what they do to the young ones' development, their bodies and the like. So this would need to be, well thought of. Who writes that menu? Is it the prerogative of the department? Is it the school itself? Does it decide that Monday is pap, Tuesday is meal or rice, and the other day we are eating 2 colors, 3 colors? Who then decides here?
Okay. So with that, they decide obviously according to some of the protocols. So they ensure that a child has at least a protein, your starch, and all the other nutrients, so your basics. So a normal menu will contain perhaps your porridge in the morning, a fruit, and then mince and a pap, so something derivative in the afternoon. So they try to sort of change up the menu here and there, but a lot of the times it's not consistent. And that is our biggest concern, to say, you cannot have an instance where you have a school that can only feed kids maybe pap and milk on that particular day, because everything has not been delivered to the school.
Awesome. Yeah.
If a program is, sorry.
Yeah, no, you can finish your thought there, Goitse.
Yes. So if the program, at the very least, is it the minister, she's able to ensure that kids at least have your protein, they have your starch, they have all of the nutrients that they need on a daily basis.
That is something that really needs to happen as a matter of urgency. As we let you go, Goitsemang, what is it that we can do to help you? How do we actually support the work that you guys do at Feed Our Kids? Is there somewhat of a petition that can put pressure and raise awareness so a lot of people can add their voice there? How do you rally behind the work that you guys do?
I think the one way people can and communities can assist us is obviously to donate towards some of these school garden packages that we have compiled. This will basically be a starter kit for the schools to basically start and maintain a school garden. And that way we are able then to at least give vegetables to these kids without the red tape that is delaying some of these issues. So they can go to our website, so that's feedourkids.org.za, and they can then perhaps donate to a particular school, or they can simply donate to have a school garden package. And so at the moment we are focused in Gauteng, but we will be moving to other provinces. We're going to announce obviously the schools that we're going to be visiting, and then obviously identify some of their needs.
Awesome. Really, really appreciate you coming through to give us your time. Are you on social media as well?
Yes, we are. We have our website, and we do have our Twitter page as well. So that's feedourkids.org.za. That's our website. And for our Twitter page, that's at feedourkids.org. So they can contact us on either one of those platforms, and they'll be able to donate or assist our program.
Awesome. Goitsemang Matlhabe, really appreciate you coming through, and everything of the best. I mean, yours become a very important one, working with the young ones. I'm just hoping that indeed we do raise awareness as much as we can, and the right people, the department, the minister, they tend to treat some of these issues that you're flagging here as a matter of urgency. Appreciate you starting the day with us in this particular manner, Goitse.
Thank you so much, Katlego, and thank you to the listeners. I have a good day further.
Same to you. Goitsemang Matlhabe coming through there as our guest, just helping us make sense of this work that they were doing, or that they are doing. They're continuing its work in progress. Really, when you look at this issue around feeding the young ones, they feed our kids.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.